Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuna Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Saranyakaro Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. In the translation, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami Pranam Mantra. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who was established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? So you can repeat after me, at least with me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we have discussed thus far text 1, how to recognize a qualified spiritual master. And in text 2, how to prevent a spiritual fall down, leading on to text 3 of how to make spiritual advancement. All this is within the support and guidance of the Shiksha and Diksha Gurus. And text number 4, how to experience love amongst devotees. And yesterday we discussed and completed text number 5 of how to associate with devotees on the basis of first coming to the platform of an intermediate devotee or Madhyam Adhikari. So here in text number 6, we will read now and then we will take this further. You can all follow in your textbooks with me. Drishtai svabhava janitai vapusas chadosai na prakritatvam hiya bhakta janasya pasyat gangam vasam na kalu buddhapena pankai brahma dravatvam apagachati niradharmai. And the translation and the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Brhat Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook the devotees having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. Now, in the purport, I'll read the first paragraph. Sudha Bhakti, the activity of the soul proper, in other words, engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, is performed in a liberated condition. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 14, text 26, it is stated, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Translation. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Amagyana timirandasya agyananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In text number 5, we discussed how we relate to devotees in general, and from our perspective, how we can observe to see someone who's in the beginning stages of devotional service, a neophyte devotee, Kanishta Adhikari. And then we also discuss how we can see from our perspective, not that they know it themselves, a Madhyam Adhikari in terms of a preacher devotee, and an Uttama Adhikari in terms of an highly advanced devotee who's also an experienced preacher devotee. So in this wonderful text here, number 6, it further explains how one should associate with the super advanced devotee who's a very experienced preacher. In other words, it may be considered like pure devotee, but there's more pure devotee and the most pure devotee, in other words, in that way. So that particular person, the most pure devotee, is being discussed here. So we can put slide 62 onto the screen, in which I'm going to read some excerpt from paragraph number 2 in the purport. Yes. So here Srila Prabhupada says in paragraph 2 in the purport, Krishna's devotee is not subjected to material condition, even though his bodily features may appear materially conditioned. One should therefore not see a pure devotee from a materialistic point of view. Unless one is actually a devotee, he cannot see another devotee perfectly. So I'm going to repeat the last sentence for emphasis. Unless one is actually a devotee, not just a devotee, but actually a devotee, then one will not be able to see another devotee, perfectly. Perfectly in the sense that we see the good qualities in someone, we see the purity in them, in that way, which we discussed also yesterday. You can put me back onto the screen. Yeah. Now, in paragraphs 4, 5, and 6, I'm just going to overview them in paragraphs 4, 5, and 6 because there's a common thread of a theme there. And that is that one's qualities is more important than one's birthright. So I'll repeat. One's qualities is more important than one's birthright. And a nice analogy can be given. Like just one fragrant rose may be growing in a field of weeds, but it does not change its condition to be considered a weed. It is still a fragrant rose in a field of weeds. It still remains its natural difference between a weed and a fragrant rose plant. So similarly, one may be born also in a family of demons or in a family of non-devotees, see, who may not be inclined in Krishna consciousness also. But doesn't mean that one is not a devotee or one is a demon to be born in a family of demons. And the famous example is Sri Prahlad Maharaj himself. See, so Srila Prabhupada also used to give the example that to be born as the son of a judge may sometimes predispose that one can become a judge because one may have some inclination by the nature of the father into one's own nature. But it does not make one a judge. See? So therefore one has to go through the regular training and regular education to become a high court judge like one's father, but it doesn't predispose one to already be a judge without that. See? And Srila Prabhupada also quotes that, sometimes people criticize the Western body devotees. So yeah, again, just to paraphrase in a summarized form, there's no such thing as an American Goswami as much as an Indian spirit soul, see, or a Chinese spirit soul. There's no such thing. And sometimes even people, even beginning stages of devotees, in the beginning stages, they may have some misconception that pure devotees or the highly advanced devotees, they may have a misconception that their bodies must be flawless, and also it must be free from sickness and disease. Some misconception may be there. And there was one man, had that misconception. And he said to Srila Prabhupada, you're wearing eyeglasses. So therefore, you're not perfect. What's that got to do with one's internal state of Krishna consciousness? In other words, Prabhupada used to wear eyeglasses or reading glasses. So somebody is saying because his eyesight is not good, he has to wear reading or eyeglasses. That means, he's not flawless in his character. So that's a misconception. That should not be there. The particular name for this type of, you could say, finding fault for the external features of a highly elevated soul, devotee of Krishna. The particular name for such an offense is called Hatimata. Hatimata means the mad elephant's offense. So in paragraph 7, Srila Prabhupada briefly describes this mad elephant offense or Hatimata. And we'll put the slide onto the screen. It's slide number 63. So the mad elephant offense is from paragraph 7. If we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnava, we should understand that we are committing an offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. An offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is very serious. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described this offense as Hatimata, the mad elephant offense. Excuse me. A mad elephant can create a disaster, especially when it enters into a nicely trimmed garden. One should therefore be very careful not to commit any offense against a Vaishnava. So, get me back to the screen. So Srila Prabhupada is not only speaking of a highly advanced devotee in this excerpt I read. He just uses the word Vaishnava, Vaishnava, Vaishnava. Doesn't use the word exalted Vaishnava. So he's referring to also to devotees in general. So we should be mindful of that in the purport itself also. So now one can ask the question, how do we avoid committing this serious offense of what is called the mad elephant offense or Hatimata, which can actually, like how the mad elephant can trample down everything in a garden, and some of this offense can trample or suppress our devotional creeper, Bhakti Lata Beach, from further continuing to practice Krishna consciousness. So there are various ways in avoiding this kind of offense called Hatimata or the mad elephant offense. So one way is that criticism of devotees just doesn't mean verbal criticism. Like one can criticize devotees or Vaishnavas, mentally, verbally, or even physically. And each one is progressively more serious, from mental to verbal to physical. However, we should also be careful, not just the words of criticizing or physically. We should most of all be careful of one's mental offense, which is the mental attitude of one devotee towards another devotee. Because in one's mental attitude, one may be implying, and nobody may even know. One may be implying some sense of animosity or malice, or one wants to say something just to manipulate somebody, like that. So, in other words, that's where it all begins in the mind. So even in the mentality, one should avoid being inimical, malicious, or even manipulative in the mind. Then one will be okay, not to bring it to verbal or physical. See? So that's how you avoid Hatimata. or the mad elephant offense. Another way is to avoid not being happy in seeing devotees in general, right? Not being happy. Now, how is it is that one may not be happy in seeing other devotees? Because from your personal perspective, one may not be happy because of some, you could say, interaction with the other devotee or devotees, that may not have been pleasing to you in the past or in the current situation of your interaction. But irrespective whether you don't have a nice, favorable relationship with the devotees, somehow or the other try to avoid not being so happy in seeing those type of devotees. Just try to be pleasant and polite. It'll help you internally in that way. And this is actually given as an instruction by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to his disciples. And in another way is that in order for that to not, in order for to be always be happy in seeing devotees, and that will lead to how to avoid this atimata offense, is that one should try to cultivate as best as possible. And that potency to cultivate that comes from a good sadhana and chanting minimum 16 rounds, especially in the morning hours before you start other services and other things for the rest of the day. That one should cultivate in one's consciousness or even mind, that one should respect everyone. And if we respect everyone, although we may apply voluntary force externally to offer obeisances to devotees, but internally one may not like the person. But at least we should respect the person that we don't like. In that sense. Now, when you do that more, then your internal state will change to become favorable eventually. So that's called a type of sadhana. And sadhana means, to apply your own voluntary force to actually do that. May not be easy, but we should try our best to do like that. And another way is that when we do offer obeisances to other devotees, it must sort of be like in a humble and submissive mode, that obeisances. So which indicates the negative side, that if one offers obeisances, just putting one's head down for a minute or less or so, and internally one doesn't feel like doing it. So one should be careful for that. So Srila Prabhupada, to reinforce, to actually help us with like offering obeisances to Vaishnavas, especially exalted Vaishnavas, Srila Prabhupada helped us to address each other as Prabhu or Master. See? And in other words, sometimes, we may tell somebody, Prabhu, can you bring me a plate of prasadam? In other words, you are telling the devotee that you are my master, but now you serve me. Bring my plate of prasadam. So it may be taken, you could say, literally or something like that. It may not be taken seriously when you actually tell somebody, Prabhu. Prabhu means that you see somebody that you can serve, not that when you say Prabhu that you can see somebody that will serve you. That's what it actually means. See? So we should be ready to serve the devotees. And if necessary, it's a little different. If necessary, we may accept some service because it may be practical at that time to accept some service. That's a little different. See? But in general, it cannot be taken very cheaply when you call somebody Prabhu. When you call someone Prabhu, it cannot really be taken, cannot be taken very cheaply when you call someone Prabhu. That's very, very important. Okay, I'm going to continue the discussion from my side and then we'll take questions shortly because If you do ask questions now, it may be answered in my coming discussion now. So let's put on slide number 64. Yes. So I have titled this particular slide with the purport from Srimad Bhagavatam in the 4th canto. Vaishnava Aparadha is more sinful than material sins. The conclusion is that if Krishna consciousness is covered by material sins, one can eliminate the sins simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So I'll explain it a little bit, but keep the slide on. In other words, if one breaks one or more of the four regulative principles, if one breaks them, then one can, you could say, overcome the reaction to breaking those four regulative principles simply by going on and trying to sincerely, would, you could say, regret, and continue to chant the holy name. Now I'm continuing to read the words in the red color. But if one pollutes his Krishna consciousness by offending a Brahmana or a Vaishnava, one cannot revive it until one properly atones for the sin by pleasing the offended Vaishnava or Brahmana. This was the course that Durvasa Muni had to follow, for he surrendered unto Maharaj Ambarish. A Vaishnava aparad cannot be atoned for by any means other than by begging the pardon of the offended Vaishnava. You can put me back onto the screen. So here Srila Prabhupada is indicating from this purport that when one commits an offense to a devotee, you could say in one sense, and comes to realize that one commits that offense, then the only recourse to redeem the reaction to that offense is to go to the Vaishnava and beg for forgiveness. That's all. And it may not be that easy to do that, but if one realizes that one should actually offer some precepts to oneself to build oneself up to get the potency to offer, or to beg for forgiveness from the Vaishnava that one offended. It's very important. That cannot be nullified. That cannot really be nullified by just continuing to chant the holy names and not going to beg for forgiveness. Very important. Now, how to do things to actually remedy the situation, we'll discuss from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, Sri Harinam Chintamani. And that's the next slide, slide number 65. Let's go there. Yes. So to blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord, you will see clearly what I've just read, which is in blue text on the screen. It is specifically, of course, in general, we should not offend any Vaishnava or devotees. But specifically, it says, who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord, especially the preacher, especially these advanced devotees who are preachers. We should be careful, extra careful in that sense. And the remedies from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is that if you do happen to have offended somebody, then one should fall at the devotee's feet and beg for forgiveness and should sincerely repent. And then if the devotee is not appeased by our apologies, that happens sometimes, then we should try to serve him either directly or indirectly. Maybe indirectly is better at this point, for many days according to the devotee's desires. And see if the offense is so great that the devotee's anger does not die, then one should take full and constant shelter of the chanting of the holy name. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that in time, the divine power of the holy name will free the person from his offense. However, he warns that one should not take advantage of this to avoid begging for forgiveness and serving the devotee. This type of mentality implicates one in further offenses. One has to be careful. So put me back onto the screen. It is important to note from what I just read from the screen that sometimes when we beg for forgiveness from devotees, it may apparently be that the devotee makes your situation worse and takes advantage of you for begging for forgiveness. But you do not have to worry too much about that. Because from your perspective, don't make a further offense by going telling your friend, you see, I went to beg forgiveness and now they blaspheming me more. See, now they are committing offenses against me. Don't do that. You should just simply be neutral and be positive and don't say much more and just move away from the situation. Because you have tried your best according to the Krishna conscious principles and practices and the scriptures to beg for forgiveness. But still, when the devotee becomes appeased in due course of time, it may take even a few days or few months or even a few years or many years. Then one can actually go and when the devotee's disposition and consciousness has changed favorably, then one can actually go again and humbly beg for forgiveness, and the devotee will eventually forgive. But don't find fault further with the devotee of feeling that I'm following dharma, but you're not following dharma. Don't do all those things. It may implicate one in further offenses. See? Now, when it comes to associating with different types of devotees, and especially in relation to advanced or senior or like pure devotees in that sense also. Yeah. So there are different ways of kind of serving the devotees. Okay? So we could say that one's spiritual mentor or one's shiksha gurus and one's diksha guru. That means when instructing spiritual masters and initiating spiritual masters, they serve the disciples. And in reciprocation, the disciples serve the spiritual masters. So when one serves each other, practically speaking, the activities may appear different because one is serving and the other is accepting service. So the disciple may act as a menial servant, whereas the spiritual master may instruct the disciples. But both are serving. Both are actually serving. So in other words, sometimes we should also know, or maybe most of the time, that it is much more easier to serve, but it is not so easy to accept service as a service in the case of the spiritual master or senior devotees or spiritual mentors. It is not easy to accept service as a service. So therefore, I personally, offer my, like koti dandavats to those who are like initiating gurus and also instructing spiritual masters as well as spiritual mentors who help others, because they have to at times accept service as a service, and that may not be so easy. Not be so easy. See, because one can get bewildered by, being offered worship and so forth. So therefore, we offer our humble obeisances to such personalities who, initiate disciples and also instructing devotees to follow in devotional service. So that's one way of looking at serving from both perspectives. One who's being served and one who is serving. And it's easier to serve rather than to be served. So sometimes a devotee who's sort of considered in inverted commas a junior devotee, they humbly serve the senior devotees. And that is actually the proper way to relate. And we should be careful that junior devotee in such a relationship should not be like, you could say, envious of, oh, why the senior devotee has to be served, and sometimes try to pull him down. And don't look forward to the day that when you'll become senior devotee and others will serve you. That's not the mentality here. The mentality is that Jivara Swarabhai Krishna Nityadas. We are eternally servants. In whatever position we are, whether we are serving or whether we are being served, we are eternally servants. So we should not become that type of masters and try to take another devotee's position and pull him or her down so that you can be in the position of being served. So one should be careful for that. So really speaking, Narada Muni also explains in Srimad Bhagavatam that, between equals, one should be friendly with each other. And friendliness means that there's like an openness of the heart. Of course, prior to that, there should be like a relationship and faith. One knows each other. You won't open your heart to just anybody and you don't know, but you'll open your heart to what is called a mitra, a friend. You open your heart to a friend and you discuss your realizations in Krishna consciousness, which is the actual meaning of Istagosti. See? Now, opposite to that, which is the negative side, is like if you're externally friendly, but you're not really a friend, but other person may think you're a friend, then you may feel proud of yourself and you may try to compete with your friend. And if your friend says something in Krishna consciousness, oh, also I know that. I also know that. That's not the way of friendship. See? Or when your friend says something in Krishna consciousness, which is like, oh, it's like an important realization in Krishna consciousness, then you may say, I also had the realization 5 years ago, like that. So there must not be like a competitive consciousness. That's actually envy. So amongst friends, there should be an openness and give credit to the other person more than you take credit for yourself and try to be competitive. So it's a very, very important aspect. So for a senior devotee to relate to a junior or subordinate devotee, and the junior devotee asks questions and the senior devotee helps the devotee. But we should be careful of not claiming that I am senior and you are junior, and then you exploit and abuse your juniors. That means you're not really senior. You're thinking, oh, they are only, submissive to me. They are belonging to me. They are my property. And one may feel as a senior devotee, and you'll tell those junior devotees who are subordinate to you, don't listen to the other senior devotee when he gives lectures. You only listen to me. Like that. So that's not really senior. That's like showing your juniors that when you become senior, you should act like me also. Become possessive, become controlling, and then exploit and abuse those who are your subordinates and so forth. So one should be careful for that. So therefore, the proper way to relate to somebody who's subordinate or junior to one is to help them with compassion and affection. It's like a relationship like a father or a mother to the children. They have that kind of faith and relationship. I am there for you. Irrespective of what your difficulties are, I am there for you all the time and will help you make spiritual progress. So in that way, that's very, very important. And then we can discuss Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in relation to the spiritual masters. So we go to slide number 66. Now those who are offering solutions here. So this is called the second offense to the holy name, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. It's called, first one is sadhanana, and this is called Guru Avagya. And here, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur helps us understand the result of offending the spiritual master is that the mantra one has received from the spiritual master loses its meaning and purpose. At the time of initiation, the spiritual master invests the holy name into the mantra, but if one offends the spiritual master, the mantra becomes useless. Subsequently, one falls into sinful company and adopts unauthorized scriptures. And the remedy is to cast away the bad association and bogus scriptures. You throw oneself at the lotus feet of one spiritual master, repenting piteously. Put me back onto the screen. This is a very important discussion for all of us. If one disobeys or offends the spiritual master may not take offense and may not, sort of accept your disobedience. Although you may be doing that. And what happens as a result? You lose taste for chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in japa. You lose taste. You may even stop chanting your rounds and stop associating with devotees, which is a really serious reaction one receives. However, there are two perspectives. That is the perspective of a person who is offending the spiritual master. But from the perspective and consciousness of the spiritual master, he does not break the relationship. Just as a father who's very affectionate to a son, but the son disobeys the father and he leaves home. And sometimes the father may tell the son, why are you leaving home? No, I don't like you. You're not fulfilling my material desires. I don't want to be your son anymore. I'm going. So the father may just say externally, if you want to go, go. But it's not that the father means it. The father will never reject a child or a son or a daughter. He'll never reject. And Prabhupada never really rejected anyone also. So similarly, the spiritual master will never really reject a disciple. But what can be done? So therefore, when the disciple returns to the lotus feet of the spiritual master will never ask the disciple, so where did you go? What did you do? What all the wrong things? No. The spiritual master is so happy and so glad that you have come back home. Literally speaking, just as the son makes the father so happy by coming back home. That's all. So therefore, the link or the consciousness or the relationship, from the father towards the son who left the father is never broken. Similarly, an instructing spiritual master and initiating spiritual master or one's mentor, if they have that kind of consciousness, they will always give you hope to come back to Krishna consciousness because they don't cut off that relationship or that link. Okay. So there's further discussions on this text, which is a little different, you could say, theme in the text. I'll save that for later on today. But we can take questions now on what we have discussed. And also, there was some requests from different devotees to me, that Maharaj, can we ask questions other than our discussions in Nectar of Instruction? I said yes. You can ask even questions in general, which may not be relating directly to what we're discussing in the current text and in the purports and in our discussion. So you're welcome to that. We do have time for that also. And we'll take those questions daily. I can take the question now, even if it's in general for other type of questions. And also what we discussed now in relation to, associating with exalted devotees in this particular text, number 6. All right, raise your hand so that Krishna Prema Pradayaka Prabhu can see you and bring you forth onto the screen to ask your questions or even, hear your comments. Yes.
Maharaj, there is
Anyone?
5 devotees have raised their hand.
Nice,
So
nice.
yes, so the first one is Phúc Wen Chong Prabhu.
Put him onto the screen. It's nice if you come on the screen, Justin.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna,
Can you?
well, I can see you now and hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Maharaj, we are speaking about this Bhagavad Gita 9, chapter 930. If a devotee sometimes seems to be engaged in abominable activities, I just want to understand how abominable activities still one can consider sadhu and properly situated. Other than that, if there is a performance of a criminal activities, does he still considered a sadhu and properly situated?
Yes, very nice question. It's actually in the purport. So if you go to paragraph 3 in your book, in your textbook, in your Nectar of Instruction, if you go to paragraph 3, I'm going to read that for you. Prabhupada explains that a little bit in that paragraph 3. So I'm reading. No one should criticize the bodily defects of a pure devotee. If there are such defects, they should be overlooked. What should be taken into account is the spiritual master's main business, which is devotional service, pure service to the Supreme Lord. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 30, Apiched sudaracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak sadureva samantavya samyak vya vasito isa. Even if a devotee sometimes, not all the time, sometimes seems to engage in abominable activities, he should never be considered as, he should not. Let me read that again, sorry. I have to follow this thought nicely. Even if a devotee sometimes seems to engage in abominable activities, he should be considered a sadhu, a saintly person, because his actual identity is that of one engaged in the loving service of the Lord. In other words, he is not to be considered an ordinary human being. So I'll explain a little bit more. Srila Prabhupada had one early disciple who's actually late now. He has left us. Yeah. But he was very instrumental, very, very instrumental in opening up Krishna consciousness in Australia and in different countries in the Far East. And later on, Srila Prabhupada, during Srila Prabhupada's time, he awarded him sannyas. Then subsequently, during Srila Prabhupada's time, he apparently became weak in his spiritual practices as a sannyasi, and he sort of left the association of devotees, and he went back out to the material world. So, and then he sort of like grew a beard, In other words, when he has a beard, you cannot make out that he was a devotee before, in a sense. So that was his camouflage. Yeah. So sometimes, being out there, he used to go to temples who didn't know him well during Srila Prabhupada's time, to the Sunday feast, and don't really talk to anyone, and and take some prasad and don't eat there, and then go away quickly before somebody recognizes him, at least through his eyes or through his nose. But he had a beard on, so he used to do that. He was very attached to prasad, which is a good attachment. Yeah. So then one time he heard that Srila Prabhupada was in a particular temple in the US. Yeah. Prabhupada was there now. So he came to that temple, which was his base before. You know, he's from America, was his base before. He was from there. So when he came to the temple, you know, he sort of was trying to make his way to Prabhupada's quarters unnoticed. And then another senior devotee, you know, saw him. And he looked at his face. Oh, it's you? You were so-and-so Swami? And you disgraced Srila Prabhupada? You know? And you disgraced ISKCON? You know? By leaving like this? You know, and you had GBC duties and you had other duties for Srila Prabhupada as a leader. What are you doing here? You should go away. Don't disturb Srila Prabhupada. So he humbly, just walked down the road in that same vicinity, completely devastated by not being allowed to see Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada's servant was there when that exchange happened between this senior devotee and this ex-sannyasi, disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And then he went quickly to Srila Prabhupada's servant, and he said, Srila Prabhupada, I recognize that ex-sannyasi disciples of yours, and you loved him very much. You possibly still love him. He came to see you, but this other senior devotee who was here said these words to him, and then he was devastated and he left. See? Srila Prabhupada said, call that senior devotee here. See? So that senior devotee came, and then Srila Prabhupada asked him, did you do like this? Did you say to him like this? Srila Prabhupada said, yeah. And the senior devotee said, yes, I said like that. Why did you say like that? Well, Srila Prabhupada, he disgraced you. He disgraced ISKCON, gave us a bad name by doing such a thing. Srila Prabhupada said, that's all right. But now you have made it very difficult for him to come back. And the devotee realized his mistake. And then immediately Srila Prabhupada told him, go and find him. You go and find him. He may not be far away from here. You find him, you beg forgiveness from him and bring him to me. And bring him to me. So the devotee went, he found him. And he begged forgiveness. Of course, a little unwillingly, but he begged forgiveness. And he brought him to Srila Prabhupada. See? And when he came to Srila Prabhupada never really said much words when he saw him, his ex-sannyasi disciple. And he bowed down to Srila Prabhupada in front of this other devotee who shooed him away, who cast him away from the temple. Don't come back here. In front of Srila Prabhupada, when he bowed down, he was feeling very embarrassed that he came back to Srila Prabhupada and he left Krishna consciousness. So in front of Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, motion with his hand, not saying anything. Closer, come closer. And Prabhupada simply stroked his head. And Prabhupada simply started crying. And the crying and tears of Srila Prabhupada went onto the head of this devotee. Imagine, father is crying for the son that he has come back. And Prabhupada eventually told him, it's okay. You may have given up your sannyas. Then you wear white cloth and you situate yourself in that and you do some service. And he came back and he did some service. And later on, even wearing white cloth, after Prabhupada left, he stayed in the temple and he had a very glorious passing away. Glorious passing. In other words, Srila Prabhupada can adjust so many things. Srila Prabhupada is beyond the purview in one sense of dharma by his causeless mercy. And therefore later on, when the temple president asked Srila Prabhupada, how can we reconcile this? And Srila Prabhupada said this verse, Apichet Sudacharo Bhajatamma Mananyapa. Sadhu eva samantavya. Although he may have temporarily left the practices of Krishna consciousness, but because his practices previously were there, he never forgot that and he came back to me. So he's still a saintly person. You know, we should know that Srila Prabhupada uses the word, even if a devotee sometimes, he doesn't do it always, even if a devotee sometimes does such activities, he comes back. When he comes back, he regrets why he did those activities, and we should help such devotees of not seeing the past, but give them the support to continue in nicely practicing Krishna consciousness. So, Fung Wang, is that okay?
Yes, Maharaj, very merciful and very touching.
You're welcome. Next question.
Next question by Manish Prabhu.
Manish, come onto the screen.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Manish. Tell me your question.
Yeah, Maharaj, I don't have a question, but I just, it was regarding your yesterday's suggestion, wherein you had told me to check out Prabhupada's link on Bhagavad Gita verse, which I did, and I heard the lecture, and I also got the transcript of the lecture, so it was really amazing, and I'm really grateful to you for suggesting me this way, so I understood what purity means, what a pure devotee. So I'm really grateful to you, Maharaj.
In other words, you followed my advice and sort of instruction, and you're making progress.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It was good.
Thank you.
I just wanted to offer you more association of Srila Prabhupada. That was my intention. And you got it.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yes. Next question or comment?
Advaita Krishna Prabhu.
Advaita Krishna Prabhu, come onto the screen.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble person, God Prabhupada.
Tell me.
Maharaj, I have two, three things wanted to understand. One, you mentioned when you were telling us about Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the Guru Avagya, offending spiritual master. The mantra becomes useless. So I somehow could not understand that. How can the mantra become useless?
You see, I explained this already to you. I'm just looking at to bless him, the devotees. Okay, I have the notes now. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes again. I've already explained that to you, but I'll like sort of give more detail on it. Right? In other words, one should be careful that the mantra that one has received from the spiritual master, it doesn't become useless from the spiritual master's perspective. It becomes useless for you because you lose interest in continuing to chant your japa. You see?
Okay.
So in other words, you know, it's like this, you know, if I give you a valuable stone called Chintamani, and I tell you the value of the stone is that it can, anything you touch can turn into gold. But you take the stone and then you use it to touch to gold, and you see it works. But after some time, you get a little bit like, okay, now the stone is mine. I don't have to return it in that sense. And then you get like, not interested in it anymore, and you'll just throw the stone away. But it doesn't mean to say that Chintamani gem lost its value. You have lost your disinterest in associating with it. So similarly, Nama, Chintamani, Krishna, Chaitanya, Rasa, Vigraha. That the Nama is a Chintamani gem. That when it touches your heart by you chanting and hearing the chanting, you get the supermost wealth of Krishna Prema, of Krishna consciousness. So therefore, it's not useless from this perspective of the spiritual master, but it's useless to you that you stop chanting your japa and associating with devotees. But when you rekindle your relationship with the spiritual master, sometimes some devotees have done that with Srila Prabhupada and with the initiating guru also. Some devotees will tell the spiritual master, can you chant on my japa beads again, please? Like that. it's not from the spiritual master side, it's from the request of the wayward disciple who fell away from the practices. And his request is, please infuse your, your potency so that I can continue to chant my japa again at least. So that's a little different from that. Is that all right for now?
Yes, Maharaj, clear.
Next question.
The other aspect I wanted to understand, in the beginning when we were hearing about the Hati Mata offense, you mentioned about the criticizing, which can be in the manner of mentally or verbally or whatever. And then you explained about not being happy seeing other devotees.
Yes.
Which is mentally coming into the mind. And yesterday you something which I was trying to absorb, which you mentioned yesterday very nicely, that to see the purity in other devotees.
Yes.
So, but at times it happens that we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and at times and this feeling comes that there's a purport which Prabhupada is explaining, and we feel that we try to put ourselves in the position that, oh, this pertains to me, and which is good maybe, and something which is bad maybe, we try and figure out something.
If something pertains to you positively by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, that's a wonderful thing. But if something is like opposing your consciousness to see favorably other devotees from the Srimad Bhagavatam, one should be careful for that.
That's what my question was, Maharaj, that we try to see, oh, this is something bad which is mentioned, oh, this person probably fits into it. So how do we understand that?
Yes. In other words, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam or chant the holy name, we are doing it for personal purification, not to purify others. See? Not to purify others. That's the first perspective in one's consciousness, which should be a foundation. However, if there's like a very beautiful and affectionate and firm relationship which will not give up, like between yourself and other devotees, including the spiritual master and including the instructing spiritual masters as well as the initiating spiritual masters, and your friends in Krishna consciousness, is that a very firm and affectionate relationship that is called, you could say, nista. It is fixed. You won't give it up. Yeah. So in that sense, sometimes, when you read something in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you feel that this section may help this other devotee who's going through some distress or some anxiety or some problem. See? So what you're really doing is you're not finding fault in the devotee that what you read may refer to that particular devotee, but it must be based on faith and relationship. Because if there's no faith and relationship, you cannot really instruct anyone. You cannot really even refer to something because it'll have an adverse effect sometimes. So therefore, when you read from Srimad Bhagavatam, and this applies to your friend or to anybody that's close to you in terms of the relationship, then you can say, look, I believe this is helping me. And you can just refer to this and this may help you. In other words, let Prabhupada speak to them. Let the Bhagavatam speak to them. In other words, by doing that, you're really offering the association of the book Bhagavatam, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you're also really offering the association of the person Bhagavat, which is Prabhupada's purport, and also your understanding of the book Bhagavat that you're offering. Just like yesterday, I requested Manish, to hear this lecture of Srila Prabhupada and also to read the transcript if he can. And he beautifully did that. Now, I may not know him very well, but there's a kind of relationship because he met me when we were together in Govardhan Eco Village and so forth. But it may not be like an ongoing relationship. But when I referred him to Srila Prabhupada, hear the lecture and also referred him to actually read the transcript if he can, he accepted it because it's Srila Prabhupada. And everyone has a relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Everyone has affection for Srila Prabhupada, even if they haven't met him personally, but they are personally having relationship with him through his translations and through his books. So, that's our goal in Krishna consciousness in a way also, to actually connect people to Srila Prabhupada through our own realizations by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam and so forth. And that's the safest way in a way. That's the safest way. Advaita, is it okay? You had a third, I think, comment or question.
Yes, Maharaj. And the third thing I wanted to request, we heard about the Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam. I've read about Swanishta, Parinishta, and Nirapeksh, three other types of devotees. Whenever you have time, could you, give us some,
Okay.
how we can connect that?
Can you explain to me while you're there now? Come onto the screen again. Can you explain to me what is your understanding of these terms?
Maharaj, what I read was that Swanishtas are the devotees who are following the Nishkam Karma Yoga. And the Parinishtas are who are into devotional service, but also following Varnashram.
Yes.
And the Nirapekshas are purely into devotional service, renounced types.
In relation
but
to
there's
this,
not much I could read.
Yeah, I could respond this to you in relation to this.
Yes,
Srila Prabhupada used to often quote one verse to reconcile all three aspects of different consciousness of devotees, whether they're in karma mishra bhakti, which is karma yoga. It's like engaging in devotional service, but it's mixed with some fruitive mentality. Which is the first one you discussed. And the second one you may have discussed is that in a Daivi Varna Ashram Dharma, that means the formative stages of using one's, you could say, in a Chatur Varna Maya Shisham Guna Karma Vibhaga Saha. I'm giving you verses here. Yeah. So the Guna and Karma, the Guna means one's nature, which will determine what type of activity one would like to do according to one's nature that one is born with in this particular subtle body, gross body, and mentality. So that's Daivi Varna Ashram Dharma. So in other words, here we are seeing that one is dovetailing one's own nature in Krishna related to Krishna conscious activities according to one's own nature terms, not according to Krishna's terms. See? So that is called also Daivi Varna Ashram Dharma. And then the last one is that one strictly follows the orders of the disciplic succession and just executes devotional service. And later on in the advanced stages of that, one does not even need to be instructed. One simply pleases the disciplic succession without even being instructed. One actually knows what to do and fully understanding the heart and desires of the disciplic succession. That's the best one. Srila Prabhupada used to quote an overriding verse, from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you'll know this also verse well. It's a well-known verse. Srila Prabhupada used to say, Akama sarva kama va, muksha kama udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. In other words, akama means that one is pure in one's practices of devotional service. Sarva kama means that one has materialistic desires like in Sakama Karma Yoga within devotional service. Like as material. In as dovetailing was material desires and Krishna related activities. And one has some fruitive mentality also to enjoy the results of one's devotional service. And Akama Sarva Kama. Then Moksha Kama indicates that one is suffering in the material world and one wants to get free, desires moksha or liberation from the material world within devotional service. I don't want to take birth again here and so forth, which is a nice thing. So, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, Yajeta Purusham Param, which indicates by one's voluntary force, whether one is full of material desire or one desires liberation from this material world, or one has no material desire, still, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, Yajeta Purusham. one should by any means engage in devotional service or in Krishna conscious activities or practice Krishna consciousness. Is that all right, Advaita, for now?
Yes, Maharaj, this is quite a bit for me to understand and sit and read. Can we read
Okay.
somewhere?
These talks are put on YouTube. So if you
Okay.
type in Bhakti Brhat Bhagavata Swami, Nectar of Instruction or Nectar of Devotion lectures, you'll get it part 1, part 2. I believe this is part number. What part number, Krishna Prema?
Wait, man, I have to check.
We started on
I can
Saturday,
request him. I can request him to send me the
the
later on.
links.
Yes, yes. You can email to me. I can always
I
share
think
the
it
links.
puts a date on it also, right?
Yes, Maharaj. I put the date.
And you can see the date. But we started on Saturday last, and today is Monday, so that means that 7, 8, 9 days. This is part 9 maybe. Saturday to Friday is 7 days. Saturday, Sunday, now Monday. So that's 7, 8, 9, 10 days, I think. Yeah, this is 10th part in that sense. Okay, good, good.
Right.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
Next question.
Next question by Ram Gopinath Prabhu.
Ram Gopinath, please come onto the screen.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, as my humble obeisance.
Hare
Can you hear me?
Krishna.
Okay.
Tell me.
I just asked a short question. How to atone for offenses done unknowingly?
We're gonna discuss that, in the verse in text number 7.
Oh.
In the sense of that. But I'll just let you know what Srila Prabhupada said. Yeah. But we're going to discuss it more detail when we come to text 7, which will be tomorrow. If we don't complete text 6, we'll complete text 6 and start text number 7. Yeah. One disciple asked Srila Prabhupada that what if I don't know that I've committed offenses? Then Srila Prabhupada said that yes, what you can do is that, see, the thing is that we live in temples as sannyasis mainly. We live in ashrams. Unless there's no center, is concentrated, and we live with devotees in their homes. But we do have a regular morning program, health permitting, and so forth. So within the morning program, when we do Mangalarti, and then Nishingada prayers, and then Tulsi Arti, and then thereafter we recite the 10 offenses to the holy name. And before we chant our japa, we say the Vaishnav pranam, Vansha kalpata rubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanabhya Vaishnavabhya namo namaha. So Srila Prabhupada said that if you don't know you have committed offenses and it's unknowing to you, just before your japa in the morning, you chant this Vaishnav pranam mantra, Vancha kalpata rubhyascha. But you got to chant it with some feeling and with some prayerful mood in your consciousness, within that mantra that, whomever I have offended, please forgive me. When you chant the Vaishnava Pranam mantra. Then what happens? Sri Krishna, who's within your heart also, hears that earnest prayer of yours, of the Vaishnava Pranam mantra before you chant your japa. And then what Sri Krishna does, from within his heart, he may give you some indication, and you may not know Krishna is doing it because it's unknowing to you that too. See, he may give you some indication during the day, who you may have offended. Oh yes, why did I say that to that devotee? I thought I was always right, but now I can see I've disturbed that devotee. I may have been right, but the way I said it was not nice. So that means you may have committed offenses. Then you, as soon as it's practical for you, you directly approach the devotee, and you beg for forgiveness. So in that way, those offenses that are committed unknowingly comes by the mercy of offering affectionately and from the heart this Vaishnava Pranam mantra. Srila Prabhupada said before you chant your japa in the morning. And then you'll chant better japa also, eventually. When these things are cleared, of begging forgiveness from other devotees for offenses that you now know that you have committed. Nice question. Thank you very much, Ram Gopinath Prabhu.
Thanks, man.
Next question.
There's two more devotees. Akansha Mataji.
Akanksha, where are you? Please come.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Danvat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Akanksha,
Can you
please
hear
tell
me?
us. I can hear you, yes.
Maharaj, my question is more on relating the incidents or the readings which I have done before. So when we were reading text 1 to 5, I wanted to understand that we read about Prajalpa, and in Canto 4, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in chapter 3, when Daksha insulted Lord Shiva, the pure Vaishnava. So is it the same offense, like is it called Prajalpa? Is it an example of Prajalpa?
Yes, Prajalpa, the common form of Prajalpa is like village talk. Two mothers may get together and talk about some other mother or some other daughter of a mother who's run away with a boy or something. You understand? It's like common talk, gossip, it's called. But the worst form of Prajalpa is Vaishnava Aparadha, offending devotees. However, you should know, and everyone else should also know, that when we discuss, Daksha and the Daksha Yajna and Sati and Lord Shiva, when we discuss them, it's a little different from how we commit offenses. Because Srila Prabhupada have us understand that any person who is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam is within the Lila Shakti or pastime potency of the Lord. See? So they are enacting a pastime, like Daksha is enacting a pastime by apparently offending Lord Shiva, in front of Sati. But that pastime is for us to learn. It's not really for Daksha to learn. But Daksha is a participant in the Lila Shakti or pastime potency of the Lord. So also we should not misunderstand these personalities that are mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is Dharma Projita Kaitavanir Matsaranam Satam. In other words, it is free from the cheating propensity. It is pure. And every personality is mentioned there. It is pure. Like I'll give you another example. Like Namaste Narashringaya Praladala Dedayine Hiranya Kashipur Vakshaha. Now we sing Hiranyakashipu's name. We glorify Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha. Because he's within the Lila Shakti or pastime potency of the Lord for us to learn with our own materialistic demon-like desire. One devotee, Srila Prabhupada named him. It's interesting. Srila Prabhupada named him at the time of initiation, and your name is Kamsa Hanta. Now, Kamsa is a demon. And Hanta means the one who killed Kamsa. So another name for Krishna is Kamsa Hanta, the killer of Kamsa. And he named this devotee, your name is Kamsa Hanta Das. So this devotee I know very well. She's Srila Prabhupada's disciple. So he used to serve with us for many years in South Africa. He's from Canada, Montreal side of Canada. So his god brothers, which are the Prabhupada's disciples, who used to be there. So sometimes they'll call him Hey, Kamsa, come here. To leave the hunter out. Like in an affectionate short name. Kamsa, come here. So it's not that they really meant that he is like Kamsa. But and then sometimes he'll tell his god brothers, yeah, I'm really Kamsa. I'm not Kamsa hunter das. I'm like Kamsa. Like that. So, these are lessons within the pastimes of the Lord for us to improve and for us to learn. Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much for the wonderful explanation and
You're
making me
welcome.
understand the instruments, how the Lord has used the instruments to do his leelas.
Yes. Even Srila Vishwanath Chakradevari Thakur, when somebody asked him a question and he commented, he said, you mean Duryodhan also? Duryodhan, he wanted to kill Krishna's eternal associates, the Pandavas and so forth in the house of Shalak, and even, offered him a poison cake to Bhima, and then, but they still never was perished and died. Even Duryodhan is such a person. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, yes, even Duryodhan is under the Leela Shakti or pastime potency of the Lord. So everything is pure in Srimad Bhagavatam. All characters are also pure. Nice question. Thank you, Akansha. Next question.
Next question by Prema Manjari Mataji.
Prema, come. Prema Manjari on the screen. Can you speak louder? Prema, speak louder. Okay, no, you have Prema. You have to speak louder.
Maharaj, I have two questions. One is
Ask,
related to the...
yeah. Can you ask your first question, but come closer to the microphone. Come closer so that I can hear your question and everyone else can hear. Right now, ask your question and speak louder if you can.
You said that, that if you avoid, the first is like if you that you should avoid in the mind, so that then you can avoid the verbal criticism. Because sometimes in the mind we start criticizing some devotees, and then that develops slowly, and someday it comes up to verbal criticism also. So how do we avoid it from the mind in the first stage? And
Nice.
sometimes my personal problem that it's not about criticism, but while I'm serving with a pure heart to some pure devotees, but some impure thoughts come just while I'm serving, as though I feel some modes are like trying to maybe test me or something, and unavoidably some thoughts will just come at the time of my service to the pure devotee. So, what is it like, that comes to cause an obstruction in my pure service?
Nice question. Good questions, practical questions. We should know that one thing is that we may see others as saintly persons or sadhus, but at the same time, we may not be so saintly in our own desires when we serve other devotees. But the other devotees may even observe that you are serving, but at the same time, they still may allow you to continue to serve them. So that's a very positive side with other devotees. So when you continue to serve, then you become purified. You become purified and you'll continue to serve. By their causeless mercy, they may still allow you to serve them, which is fine. Yeah. However, the main aspect of doing any service to anyone or any practical service, even without serving devotees, like you cook on your own or you worship your deities. See? The main aspect is that we can protect ourselves from our own desires that may be coming to the mind and not moving to action by simply chanting first our minimum 16 rounds of japa. See? And even if those desires come into the mind, whether it's offensive or whether otherwise, because you have chanted in the morning and you have surrendered to the holy name as best as you can. You may not have heard every syllable of your japa, Hare and Krishna, Rama. I mean, not ever, but still you have surrendered to Radha and Krishna in the morning. And they, Radha and Krishna, unknowing to you, will help you. Will help you. To tell you a fact, I have personal experience of this. And when I chant my japa, I'm helped throughout the day. So that's actually the secret. It's an open secret. Try to chant your japa as much as you can in the morning before you engage in a service to other devotees or other practical services, like deity worship or even cooking and cooking for the family, if you can. And like I've stressed in so many ways and in so many times in our discussions, the only way to do that is early to bed and early to rise. And then one can chant in the morning. Very, very, very important. Now, the other type of answer I may give to you in your question is this. Because one is sincere in one's heart and consciousness, and one is sincerely chanting one's japa as best as one can, one is given the potency. Actually, one is given the potency to immediately recognize in your mind that this is not very favorable thoughts. This is not, not good thoughts of being offensive to other devotees and so forth. That means you're making advancement because you can recognize it in the mind. But you're not telling anybody, which is fine, because in the Kali Yuga, a mental offense or even an unfavorable thoughts in the mind, you'll never get a reaction for that. You won't get a reaction for that. You don't have to worry. Why? Because you can recognize it, that it's an activity of the mind. It's not your activity from the heart as a spirit soul, because you are sincere. Sincerity comes from the heart, it doesn't come from the mind. So when you recognize, this is an activity of the mind, why am I thinking like this? But you are actually not thinking like that. The mind is thinking like that. So when you get the potency to differentiate or to discriminate from the thoughts of the mind and from your sincerity of the heart, you're in a safe position. You're in a safe position. So don't worry, the mind is so naughty. And sometimes it's a bit crazy, the mind. And sometimes it's wild and mad, the mind. But the nice thing is, you realize, I am not the mind. I am the spirit soul in relation to other devotees who are practicing Krishna consciousness, and I should serve them to my heart's content. Not that the mind should become in my way of serving them. So that sincerity and carries you through because you sincerely and trying your best to chant your japa in the morning. Prema Manjari, is that all right?
Thank you so much, Sridhar. And there's one more question which I would like to ask generally, if there's time.
There's no time for today. I like to end on time and begin on time because we honor everyone like that. Is that all right? So you save your question, write it down and ask me tomorrow. We'll take your question definitely tomorrow and other questions, those are people. If you have other questions, it's wonderful. Today you asked so many questions, all of you. So if you have a question, please write it down and don't forget to ask it tomorrow. We'll give you more time like this for questions. All right? And then we'll continue to complete text number 6. And we hopefully will begin text number 7. We're giving enough time for you to ask other questions also in general as per the request of several devotees. All right. This was wonderful from all of you in your nice association once again today. And I look forward to your association tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Nectar of Instruction ki, Shri Upadesh Amrita ki, Nitai Go Premanande Hari Hari Bo.